Hi, I'm Todd Nash, President of the Oregon Cattlemen Association. I'm here today with two of our most esteemed members. We have Dalton Straus from Southwest Oregon and Mack Birkmaier from Northeast Oregon. And gentlemen, you want to introduce yourselves a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do there? And Mack, we'll start with you.
Okay, thanks, Todd. And it's good to see old Dalton on the screen there. We're almost lifelong buddies. We've both been in the OCA for a long time. And so I guess I'll talk about that just a little bit right on the start. Our involvement in the OCA, I picked this up off the wall. This is my grandmother's badge at the OCA convention in 1938. So my grandparents were involved in this thing back to 1938. Now up here in Wallowa County, there's in the stock growers here, we've been active in this since I can remember, just about, because we always came to the meetings here in Wallowa County. But my dad was a president of the Wallowa County stock growers in about 1944, 45. I was president of the Wallowa County stock growers in the 66 probably. And now Tommy, my son, so we're three generations of presidents in the Wallowa County stock growers. And of course, we've been affiliated with the OCA all of that time. I don't know, the first meeting I went to was at the old OCA Inn there, and I was wondering if Dalton, when he gets on there, maybe he can answer this question. Did he go to meetings at the OCA Inn in Prineville? That was quite a long time ago. And but anyway, our family was always involved, and of course you get into the state association, and it took a long time to get up through all the committees back in those days to get up to be the president. You were pretty closely vetted and screened by the time you got to the and I noticed today we're going in lots quicker than, and that worries me a little bit about our customs and whatnot that has prevailed, that held us strong. But that's just one little point. Our family showed up here in Wallowa County in the late 1880s, and Todd, they got here kind of late, I guess, because they came from Kansas in a wagon. But anyway, they got out here in the Prairie Creek area where they'd going to homestead some land, and they didn't have time to build a cabin. And so they dug a hole in the ground and survived that first winter. Now, my great grandmother had about 6 kids when they came, and she went ahead and had about 5 more. Well, they had 10 boys. But anyway, they survived in that hole in the ground on the banks of Prairie Creek out on the old Orange Pratt place, which later came into their ownership. But they ran sheep clear out to Swamp Creek, Elk Mountain country, and clear to the tip of the Wallowa Mountains. And there was 220,000 sheep in Wallowa County at some of that time. And of course, all that ground has been locked up by the government since. And that's one of they took the mountains about 3 stages, and then that was the summer range for the sheep. And then the county was kind of suited to sheep. And I guess then they took Snake River. That was where the homesteader was with the sheep and the big bands down there, and they'd summer in the mountains and winter in Snake River. Well, then they got that Snake River all in that Recreation Act. And so I don't think there's hardly enough to get a mess of lamb chops here grown anymore. And but I guess one point out of that whole thing was that there wasn't any wolves here Todd. That's one of our big nightmares right now, of course, the wolf, and it's on the top of my mind all the time. But there was no talk of that. I was born in 31. I'm 92 years old, and so I've been around. And Granddad was in the sheep business down there, and so we were around government trappers, and we were around. The coyote was the menace at that time. They paid a bounty on the cougars, and they paid. I don't remember if there was a bounty on bears. I know there was on coyotes, but anyway, the point is every predator has been turned loose on us up here now. Every predator. They've changed the rules on the hunting on cougars. No bounty, but a prescribed hunt and everything. Everything is in the predator's favor up here, and so that's an issue with the cattlemen statewide, and it's going to be more of an issue statewide than just Wallowa County pretty quick. I was just reading the other day where in Northern California now, that old OR7 that left up here where the breeding ground is, why he's raising havoc down there in Northern California, and they're just killing cattle to beat the band down there. So, but I guess my point there is there wasn't any coyotes here, and I think that's the vulnerability that we need to attack. I know that during my time on the Wolf Committee and whatnot, we had speakers, scientists, outdoorsmen, everybody testifying, a lot of them with big college degrees and everything else, that there never was this gray wolf that was imported from Canada to come down here. I see the threat of that as we have to close out these allotments up here because of our distance. You can't get anything confirmed because it's too far. By the time they get there, the protocol and the hurdles to get a compensation or anything, it can't be done. It's impossible to get that done and get your, for instance, we had the 20 calves that were killed, a lot of them there this spring really early. And you can't get a confirmation. It's unfair. And so I was writing, why this is on the top of my head is I was trying to write some testimony to go down to that wolf deal, Todd, that you're aware of, and I'm going to clean it up, and I may just send it to the people who are going to look at this Oregon wolf plan and see why we opposed it from the very start. So anyway, you want to question me about something, some particular point, or?
Yeah, let's get Dalton on here and give him a little equal time. And Dalton,
here.
I had kind of the distinct pleasure this year. Mack, you didn't make it over to the OCA meeting, but we sang happy birthday to you anyway, and you turned 92 years old. And Dalton, I happened to be down there in Jackson County a few days before you turned 92 and got to sing happy birthday to you. So we got 184 years worth of experience here. But Dalton, I want to turn this over to you to talk about some of what you've had going on there.
Okay, I'm gonna be a little more brief than Mack was, as usual. But we go back, I think our Jackson County Stockmen's Association was formed in the 1930s. And they called it the Stockmen's Association because Mack has talked about sheep, and Wallowa County sheep was also a big livestock part of Jackson County's livestock entrepreneurship. So we continue to carry that Stockmen's Association moniker, even though we have very few sheep left in Jackson and OCA County. So anyway, I didn't start as to be involved. My dad was involved fairly early with the organization of the association, and up until I guess I returned from the service, and I got involved at that point, and after the Korean War, and got involved at that point, and the first meeting, it wasn't a cattlemen's meeting, but it was a Forest Service meeting in LeGrand that had to do with our Forest Service permittees. And we ran on the Rogumpco Divide with our summer grazing, and Mack, of course, was all over Wallow County. And so it was we loaded up a car and drove to that Forest Service meeting. Our county president at the time and myself and a couple others drove to LeGrand. And that's the first time that I met Mack Birkmaier. And for some reason, our association relationship just clicked and we became lifelong friends. Actually, we were married the same year. Everything in our resumes pretty much hangs in there together. And it's always such a pleasure to get together with Mack when that happens. I find that I was involved at the state. Enjoyed the time I was involved with Mack when he was president. I think I was a regional vice president at the time. Probably his animal health and brand committee chairman at the time, and he held me to the task. I mean, he didn't just say, "Okay, you're the chairman. This is what I want you to do," and we did it. I mean, we better did it, or Mack was going to come down on us. So anyway, it's great times. I still look forward to getting together with the old timers at the meetings, and I was just sorry that I couldn't get to Pendleton this last January or earlier this month to be at the national meeting, but it was just the wrong time of year for us. So with that, that's my background on my association with the Oregon Cattlemen's Association. It's been a wonderful relationship. I continue to support the organization and our state president, who is doing a fantastic job, in my opinion.
Well, thanks. I don't know that I deserve that, but both of you guys have been really a big encouragement to me. And I see you constantly encouraging other young people and other producers. And I'll start with you this time, Dalton. What can you say to young people that might encourage them that are kind of going through a difficult time? Because we've all been through difficult times. What can you tell them to maybe inspire them to keep going?
You know, it's tough for young folks at the cost of attending these state meetings, whether they be quarterly meetings or state meetings, when you've got a young family at home, number one. Number two, you go to a state meeting or a regional meeting or representing whatever committee you may be involved. It costs money. You know, you've got to rent. We usually rent a motel room while you're there. Fuel costs have become prohibitive, just and the meals as well. So it's just really a challenge to try to talk young people into leaving their families, spending that kind of money, which they're trying to build their own, I guess, business, whether it be their own business with cattle as a hobby, or whether it be whatever. It's hard for them to get away, and I've been personally, I would like to stay away from trying to challenge these young folks to come to these meetings, at least far away meetings, because it is so expensive. I've been there and I know what it's like, but let them grow their families, get them up into high school or college level, and then start trying to get them more involved. I'd like to get them involved at the local level to start with, but eventually they're going to have to move into state roles, and I just think it's too much to ask of them to spend that much time and money to try to represent their people at the state level. Right now, I think Randy here in Jackson County has probably done more. We've been trying to get people involved probably for the last 30 years to get younger people involved. It's been a real challenge, but as we've broken apart our larger ranches and operations into smaller tracts where people can own a few cattle of their own, still hopefully build a herd and support it with a job on the side. I think we've been able to get more people involved and come to the meetings. And Randy especially has this last year, the amount of people that we've been able to recruit to our membership roles has been amazing, and it's just so good to see. And I think, Todd, as you saw at our annual meeting, the number of young folks that were there was pretty astounding. Challenge still trying to get them funded somehow so that they can afford to attend those meetings. And I went through that with my own dad. My dad was pretty involved in a lot of meetings, and I was a child, was a little upset growing up because my dad was always, I mean, if he wasn't working, he was always at a meeting someplace. I kind of felt like maybe I needed to see him a little bit more. And so I just really feel constricted, I guess, of how or what we can do to keep these people, young people, involved until they get old enough that they can feel like leaving their families and they can afford to go to these meetings. As you're well aware, motel room anymore, well, not only a motel room, just the registration for the state cattlemen's meeting this year was $250. And, you know, even though in today's dollars, maybe that's not that much, but in today's dollars from what the young folks get from their cattle operation, that's a lot of money to come out. So that's my comments, Mr. President, on young folks. I want to see them come and be involved, but I don't see how we can afford to make that happen.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dalton. Really be cognitive of that. Mack, in particular, young people on a ranch, and maybe not so much the association, but how you might encourage them. You know, you talked about tough times with your grand folks, but how do you spur them on to keep them interested in a industry that is sometimes really challenging to financially keep going with?
Well, see, I was the president in, I think, 95 and 96, and for me at that time to get my son involved and he was ready. He'd gone to Pendleton school there and learned kind of to inseminate and preg test and things like that. And it was time for him to kind of get more leadership in the ranch than me bossing him all the time. So I thought it was my time to you know, you're kind of naive when you take on the job of the president of the OCA. And for some reason, you think you can do it better than anybody else, or you wouldn't do it. You know, if there's everybody else standing around there that, and by that time, you know what your intelligence is and how you stand up against the crowd, and you're taking on the big shots in the government. You're fighting everything just about that they're doing to you. You know, they're grabbing your land and they're listing the fish and they're restricted in every way. And so I don't know. I guess I was naive. I just thought, gosh, I believe I can do some good. I believe I can help our industry. And you can be a fighter, kind of like me. But I had meetings on the highest levels in government, you know, And I could put some of them right up a tree, Todd, because I knew so damn much more than they did about the resource out here and what it needed and what it didn't need. And I discovered that the bureaucracy then at that time, they were all in Oxfords back in Washington, D.C. and in state offices. States are just as bad as the feds. And boy, there's no shortage of them. But they were making the policy and the rules that these poor biologists and range guys on the Forest Service had to implement on us that was 100% wrong for the ranges. And so it was controversial if you were going to just not sit there at those meetings and nod your head and then sign up for the next meeting. That seemed to be the goal of a lot of those people. And I'd see them go clear around the table, maybe a dozen people sitting there, and all agency, most always agency and environmental group leaders, lawyers that we were up against. The cowmen were up against lawyers. Even the school boards that I was involved in, hell, it was OEA, teachers unions, and all of this stuff that we were combating. And we really aren't a match for them, Todd, when it comes to talking all day and saying nothing. But I've seen them go around the table and never mention the elephant in the room, what we was there to talk with, whether it was too many elk or the riparian zone situation. And in my time, we battled that 38 bill, I think, that was going to, Oregon had the bill in there to make us fence every stream in Oregon. You remember that? Well, that cost a lot of money, boy, to fight that. We had to hire an outfit out of California, and that was a little after I was president, but I was still attending all the meetings and everything. And then before that, we took on the Camp Creek case, which was that non-point source of pollution. They were trying to say that the pollution that just ran to the creek and had for forever was a point source, and that cost a little over $500,000. And we partnered up with the Farm Bureau and the Public Lands Council. We finally got the bill paid on that, but it was tough for us it was tough, and we were always on defense. It seemed like, and so we were trying to turn that around to where I remember a meeting in La Grande, and a guy, and we were talking about, it seems like we were always defending ourselves, it cost money and hiring lawyers and whatnot. And he made the comment that stuck in my mind and clear to today. As he said, well, there wouldn't be near as many duck hunters if the ducks shot back. And that kind of resonated with me. We was the on the receiving end all the time. We was the duck that was getting shot, But anyway, that's one of the. But we hired a lawyer for a time, but you get into financial trouble pretty quick. We was financing a museum, and that was tough. It divided our association a little bit in the museum lovers. We was in downtown Portland. We weren't making any money out of it, and we was sharing some of it with the Beef Council and whatnot. And we couldn't keep our lawyer because he was a good Wallowa County boy that I'd hired in the shade of a tree here on a tree tour. Lindsay Slater Johnson down there from Wallowa, and doggone it, he was so darn good that the politicians hired him away from us, and he's been working in Washington, D.C. for the rest of his life since back in '95 as aides to these congressmen. So it's a fight with bureaucracy today, and it's hard to fight the biologists and your Forest Service guys who are part of our community here, and they're just kind of being sent like old Coley and Jake like dogs out there to fight us, and they're trying to accomplish what the boss wants back in Washington, D.C. And that's what's scaring me to death. And they keep coming with enlargements of our wild and scenic streams and old Wyden's democracy bill. We've all been working on that and wondering where that's going now. I heard that they're gonna give it to the new Congress to get through and whatnot. So I've never seen one of those boundaries on the state or the federal that wants to reduce the size of the boundary. They always get bigger, and they're violating our constitutional rights. Doggone it, they lock up all the timber, these old canyon ranches like ours that go up and down these streams, you know. They take the timber. They take the timber, and they widen the deal every time they meet, seems like. Make deals with the timber companies and whatnot that it's just hard to keep up with government. They steal our land. I don't like it. They've taken so much from us now that go back to my 220,000 sheep, and now there's none here. Those ranchers aren't here. That land is not ours anymore. They've just taken it over, and so how do we keep our cities and our communities and hospitals and all these? To keep the community, you're going to have the cattle business out there in our country. That's what the big deal is here. So those are some of the things that's on my mind anyway, Todd. I don't know if I've answered anybody's questions or
Well,
but as far as now, here's one thing I did do. One thing I forgot. I used my second vice presidents. Now, and Dalton, I thought I was coming down on those committees, but I was probably, but I was coming down on my second vice presidents because I thought their deal is to visit the other counties in that. That was my commitment that I tried to get out of my second vice presidents. You attend the other counties' meetings. Today with these Zoom things or whatever this is we're talking over, I can see a real good way for them to do that now. That's very easy, but you got to keep the unity of the OCA and keep it up by being involved in all those counties and let them know that a state officer is attending their meetings means that to them. And I think it will enhance the county meetings if you can get your second vice presidents to commit to that. And so that's one last point. I'll just shut up now. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mac. And Dalton, I'm just going to let you say whatever you want because I keep asking questions to you guys, and you keep saying whatever you want anyway. So.
He's supposed to listen, ain't he, Dalton?
I told you I'd be much briefer than Mac, as always. And but Mac, I was one of those regional vice presidents that you tasked to go visit the counties. And I want to say I visited Lake and Klamath and Jackson County almost every meeting that they invited me, and reported back to you. So I'm not one of those you're talking about. Anyway, if I'm on now, you know, it's always been such a pleasure to go to a meeting with Mack Birkmaier because he had a way of I'm not sure how you describe it, but he would, the people that were against us, people that we thought were anti-cattle and anti-whatever we were doing, he had a way of making those people laugh. No matter what the issue was, Mack had a homespun way of making disarming those people. And I think we got more from Mack's ability to make light of some of the things that they were trying to get from us than any other other leader we've ever had. He just had that ability to do that back, and I always appreciated that. I admired it. I envied it, actually. I wish that I'd had that capability. But the we just elected a new regional vice president for our region, Lake Jackson and Klamath counties. And I think we're including Josephine County in that now as well. That is just retiring as soil water conservation district manager here in Jackson County. And he has committed to visiting all three of those counties whenever they will have him. And he will have the time. He's got a small registered Angus operation on his own, he and his family. And he's gonna, I think he's gonna do a great job of trying to be the conduit between those counties and the state, and to help Todd out for this next year as far as the issues that we have in the counties. But I think the time that I spent as an animal health and brand committee chairman were some of the most challenging times we had back in the, probably that would have been the early mid-70s when I was a county president, I think in 71 and 72. And when Ermy Davis became president, he asked me to be the animal health chairman, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured, well, I'll call on the people that do know what they're doing. So I ended up making real quick friends with the state vet and the OSU veterinarian and the people that work with them. And so we're able to create some very interesting meetings, because I had those people come to the meetings and talk about the issues at the time. And the issues at the time were brucellosis, which Todd just had on a couple of weeks ago with the state vet, and Roger Huffman, our treasurer, and our current animal health brand committee chairman. And the issues are still there. They're still the same, but I think we did a lot of good at that time but we had money to move around and go to these meetings and work with the surrounding counties, surrounding states, I should say, Washington, Idaho, and California, to try to improve our ability to handle this brucellosis problem. And today, the state vet and many other veterinarians are recommending that we do away with vaccinations completely, that the only way we're going to get rid of the disease itself is to do away with the vaccination, because we keep injecting that disease into the cattle. But they're allowing individuals to make their own decisions. We, as a business, our business, my dad and we were wiped out twice by brucellosis. Once in the dairy herd and once in the beef cattle herd. And that was after we had started a vaccination program. So I for one, will never quit vaccinating my cattle for brucellosis, because I think it's too expensive not to. And I'm telling you, when we first got the disease in the dairy herd, the cattle turned out, I mean, they turned to be outlaws, because the state vet come around and take but it was mandatory, the state, and not state vet, one of the federal veterinarians would come around and take blood from those cows as they were in their stalls in the dairy barn, and they just hated it. And it became really difficult to get those cattle into this dairy barn after a few times, because they were afraid what was coming. So the challenge of trying to keep that disease out of our business was going to continue to be a challenge, I think. The other thing during that time was scabies. And scabies, we had a disease that came in from one of the operators that goes back and forth across state lines, several states. He ran cattle in several states, and we got scabies, and it was, as a guy was renting ground in several different places and bringing the disease from California into different places in Oregon became a real challenge. And I can remember one of the meetings we had in Lake County. There was more people at that meeting, people that were upset about the issues that were happening with the rules at the state. There were more people at that meeting than there were at a regular state meeting. I mean, they were really up in arms, and they were upset with our state vet at the time. And I thought at the time he was doing a fairly decent job, or really, I thought he was doing a good job, but it wasn't enough as far as those folks are concerned, and I can understand, because they were having these cattle come in next door to them, and that was a pretty serious thing. If they happen to get it, then they had to start treating for it. So anyway, it's been a fun ride. I'm still involved. I want to be involved. I was never one like Mack. I was never able to come up and I guess smooth the politicians, but I tried. I mean, I spent a lot of time going back to Washington, D.C. to visit with the Farm Credit Council and the Farm Bureau and the cattlemen too, as when I was on the Beef Council. So it was been a great ride. But right now I'm kind of like Mack, trying to turn it over to the next generation. So, always good to see you, Mack.
Well, Dalton and Mack, really been a pleasure to have you both on today. And this has been by far our longest segment, but worthwhile. It's pretty hard to put 182 or 84 years into 30 or 40 minutes here, but we gave it a shot. And you guys have really been pioneers in your service and what you've done as far as some of those old issues that we had with brucellosis and scabies, and they're still coming. You know, trick is still out there. There's a foothill abortion tick, and there's a number of things that we're going to have to keep our eye on and keep working on. And brucellosis is still to the east of us, and we'll keep an eye on it. And but you guys got us to where we are today, and we're better for it. So
one last word, Todd. Last word. I think it was pretty obvious that I picked the right man for that animal health committee. He's still working on that, isn't he? So I'm sure glad to see that. I'm glad to see that. I was thinking, here's a couple old timers still talking, and our fighting blood hasn't turned quite to urine yet. So loop us in there, and we'll work for you till the day we die. Okay? Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if you guys make it to convention next year in Pendleton, Oregon, and you know, by what I hear, Dalton drives the same miles per hour as his age, and it doesn't take him very long to get there. And so you guys get there, we'll make a special table just for you guys, and make sure that you guys get to visit and people get to visit with you. So
thank you, Todd. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have a great day, and thank you for getting on here today.
You bet.
All right.
Thank you, Todd.
Bye.
All right.